All right, today we're going to learn how to raw process an image. This is a very important step because you want to make sure that you raw process the image because it's like the foundation of the image. It controls the color, the exposure, the contrast, the shadows and highlights, the clarity, the vibrance and saturation. And you want to make sure that all of that is done properly for your image. Okay, so the first thing you need to do is you need to go and open up a file. So you're going to go to our files where we have all of our light painting portraits, and you want to make sure that you find your image. And you're going to notice that there's a CR2 file next to a JPEG, and you're going to want to open up the CR2. Okay, so let me state that again. You want to open the CR2 file, not the JPEG, okay? How do you know you've opened up the proper image? Well, you should see the word or the letters CR in 2 with the image number. And then you're going to click on open, and you're going to pull this up. It's called the Camera Raw 10.5. And it's going to show the image, and it's going to show a whole bunch of different ways to color balance, exposure balance our image, okay? So this image is really dark, but you know what? It's not a bad image at all. It can actually be lightened and worked on. And you may find that a lot of your images are a bit dark, and you need to lighten them up a little bit. So we're going to do it in this order. We're going to start with the temperature. So I want to make this a little bit warmer. So I'm going to bring this up to 9800. And I want the tint to be a little more red. So I'm going to make it a -10. Okay. Now it really depends on your image. You may go down in coolness, and you might bring it up in cool rather than warm tones. So you're actually going to be processing this image more than once. So I recommend that you process it for cool tones and then do it a second time and process it for warm tones. Okay, so I'm starting off with the warm tones here, and then I'm going to go in and process it a second time for the cool tones. Okay, so step number 3 is the exposure. Now, since this is dark, I'm going to want to bring up the exposure just a little bit. I am going to play more with that, but for now, I'm going to go up to about 1.5. And you can see that this histogram moved to the right slightly up here in the top. All right, now step 4 is the clarity. So I'm going to come back to these, but first I'm going to jump down to the clarity. And I'm going to add about 30. We don't want to add visual noise, so about 30 is good. You can see that the image is a lot sharper now. Alrighty, so I've got 30 here. And then I'm going to go to dehaze, and I'm going to add about 30 as well. And that will continue to kind of sharpen the image and remove any glares. All right, that's what dehaze does. And then I'm going to go to vibrance, and I'm not going to overdo this too much. I'm just going to put it on about 15, and you may find that, yours will vary slightly. And then I'm going to go to saturation. I'm going to add about 15. I don't want to overdo that as well on saturation. And then I'm going to come back up here to contrast, and I'm going to add a little bit of contrast. I'm going to put in about 15. Now, your numbers may vary slightly, so that's okay. Then I'm going to go to highlights. Now, I actually want to bring the highlights down because I want to show more details in the fiber optic tool. I want to see some of the lines a little more, so I'm going to bring the highlights down to about -25. And then I'm going to adjust the shadows down. I want to get rid of the shadows because I kind of want to hide the chair. And I don't want to I wanted to hide the floor. So I'm going to go to -50 on that, just around there. And then I am done with these, but I want to come up to my next tool, which is my detail tool. It looks kind of like 3 little triangles, and I'm going to click on that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in on this image, and I'm going to sharpen and add some noise reduction. Okay, so to zoom in, I'm going to go Control plus on the keyboard, and I'm going to get really close up so that I can see some of the visual noise here. All right, so I can see some of the visual noise in the light and dark areas. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to sharpen the image. In the process of sharpening the image, I'm going to go to about 40. Let's see, I'm going to sharpen it slightly, and then I'm going to do a noise reduction, and I'm going to do 40, and you're going to notice that it kind of softens it, and it kind of blends the visual noise a little bit. Okay, so here's before. You can actually see some of the visual noise, like little dots, right? And then if I go up to 40, it softens it and kind of gets rid of that visual noise. Okay? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to back out again. I'm going to go Control minus and then zoom out again back to where it was before. And now I'm going to come up to my FX effects. Okay? And what I want to do is I want to do some cropping, vignette cropping before I open my image. And I want to bring this down to about, let's see, I want to show a little bit of black around the edges. So if we put this back to where it was, you can see that it's pretty light around the edges, and I want the edges to be a little darker. So I'm going to bring the vignetting down a little bit and to about -30. And so you can still see this chair, and that's something that we're going to deal with a little bit later, because I really don't want to see like the reflection off the chair. So, but now the edges are a little darker, and now this image is ready to open. Okay. All right. So we're going to leave this open, and now what we're going to do is we're going to go back in again. We're going to go back to the raw image. 6217. I'm going to click on that raw image and open it a second time. And this time I'm going to make my tones cool. So I'm going to bring this down to about 3900. And I'm going to bring this up to about +50. And we're going to have a cool tone here that we're now going to balance with that warm tone. And then I want to hide my chair a little bit. So I'm actually going to work with my exposure and my blacks. Okay, so to hide the chair, I'm actually going to bring up the exposure a little bit first, because I want to keep this area light, where the face is, where the hands are, and where all the fiber optic is, kind of around the body. But I'm going to bring my blacks down to like about -55. Now this could change for your images and your monitors high. You know, if your monitor's a little bit brighter, you may need to change this a little bit. But I did hide a bit of the chair, and later on I'm going to add a vignette, like a second layer vignette that will completely get rid of this highlights on the chair. So now I'm going to open up this image. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a Control A or edit, or a select all, which is also Control A. And then I'm going to go edit copy or do a Control C. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to paste it onto the first image that I raw processed. So now I've got my warm and cool tones. I'm going to add a layer mask. Okay, so I'm going to click on the layer mask icon and add a layer mask to the top layer. I'm going to go in and use my brush tool, and I'm going to make sure black is over white. And I'm going to change my opacity to about somewhere between 30 and 40%. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of go through here, and I'm going to start adding in some of the warm tone. from the original raw processing that we did, and it's just kind of a mix of warm and blue, kind of cooler blues in the fiber optic. And then in the background, I'm going to have a mix of kind of like this pink and some kind of orangey tones. Okay. And then I'm going to add in a solid color, which is going to be my vignette. Bring all this all the way down. Okay, and then I'm going to click on the layer mask. And again, I'm going to make my brush a little bit bigger. And I might bring my opacity up just a little bit on the vignette part. And I'm going to start kind of revealing the whole top layer of this image. And a little bit of the body, but I'm going to avoid the chair reflection. I'm going to show a little bit of the foot here. And I'm seeing that some of the chair reflection's coming back, but I'm going to reverse, put white over black to go back in and just get rid of some of that chair reflection. But then I want that shoe to show up because I really like that shoe. Get rid of that. I might make my brush a little smaller so that I can just focus only on the shoe here. There we go. Make sure. And we can see it developing on our layer mask here over here on the right. All right. Just making sure that these fiber optic tools, the brush strokes are all showing, and we can see it developing here on the layer mask. And then thinking about maybe bringing in some more cool tones, maybe on this right side of the image, and maybe a little more warm tones on the left side of the image, just to kind of give it some variety. And I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to look to see if I need to do any retouching. I'm noticing that I do need to do some retouching. I'm going to turn off my layers. Looks like it might be on my background layer, so I'm going to duplicate my background layer and call it Retouch. And what I want to get rid of is these little specks, just like little green specks here and there. And I might want to just clean that up a little bit using the cloning tool. So to do that, I will click on my cloning tool, and I'm going to have a kind of smaller brush. And I'm going to Alt click, and then I'm going to clone out some of these. If you notice it's not cloning, then it might be on the layer 1. So figure out which layer is where you need to do the cloning. Okay, so you just kind of go through and clean it up a little bit. So if I zoom in and use my navigator over here to kind of move around the image, you see this little green speck here? I want to get rid of that. And I'm having to do that on layer 1, okay? Okay, so just keep going around. When you're done, you can see that kind of the difference between the retouching and not. It just kind of cleans it up a little bit. And then the second thing you can do is go, after you're done raw processing and adding these 2 layers, raw processing 2 layers and adding a vignette, make sure you go in and look at the directions and see what other layers you need to add to meet the criteria for the project.